After refusing to sell my restaurant to fund my son's business, he vanished. A decade later, a terrified boy knocked on my door at midnight. My mom is gone, and she said if anything happened, find you. She said you're my grandmother. I'd never seen this child. Then he said my son's name. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me take you back to how this nightmare began, because what happened next would turn my quiet life in Millbrook, Maine, upside down in ways I never could have imagined. I'm Margaret Thompson, though everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 68 years old, owner of Maggie's Kitchen on Main Street. And until that stormy November night, I thought I'd successfully buried the most painful chapter of my life. I was wrong. The knocking came again, more desperate this time. Please, someone help me! It was a child's voice. My maternal instincts overrode my caution, and I hurried to the front door, peering through the peephole. A small boy stood on my porch, soaked to the bone, his dark hair plastered to his head. He couldn't have been more than 10 years old. I opened the door, and he looked up at me with eyes that stopped my heart cold. They were Danny's eyes. My son Danny's exact hazel green eyes, the same ones that had pleaded with me 12 years ago to sell everything I'd worked for. Are you Mrs. Thompson? The boy asked, his teeth chattering. Margaret Thompson? Yes, sweetheart. Come inside before you catch pneumonia. I ushered him in, grabbing a towel from the linen closet. What's your name? Where are your parents? He wrapped the towel around himself, still shivering. My name is Oliver. Oliver Thompson. He paused, studying my face with an intensity that was unsettling in someone so young. My mom is gone, and she said if anything ever happened to her, I should find you. She said you're my grandmother. The room tilted. I gripped the door frame for support. I think there's been some mistake, honey. I don't have any grandchildren. Oliver reached into his soggy backpack and pulled out a waterproof bag. From it, he produced a photograph. She gave me this. She said to show it to you. My hands trembled as I took the picture. It was Danny, my Danny, standing next to a beautiful young woman with auburn hair and a kind smile. But this wasn't the Danny who'd stormed out of my restaurant 12 years ago. This Danny looked older, peaceful somehow, happy in a way I hadn't seen since he was a child himself. That's my mom and dad, Oliver said quietly. Dad's name was Danny Thompson. Mom said he used to live here with you before I was born. The bat slipped from my numb fingers and clattered to the floor. 12 years of wondering, of hoping, of guilt and sleepless nights. And here was my answer in the form of a terrified little boy who had my son's eyes and my stubborn chin. Where is your mother now? I whispered. Oliver's lower lip trembled. She went to the hospital 3 days ago. She was really sick. Mrs. Patterson next door was supposed to watch me, but she had to go take care of her own mom. Mom made me promise that if she didn't come back, I would come here to find you. My heart shattered. This child had been alone for 3 days, carrying out his dying mother's final instructions to find a grandmother he'd never met. What hospital, Oliver? Cedar Ridge Medical Center. It's about 2 hours from here. Mom drove me partway before she got too sick to drive anymore. I walked the rest. He walked. For hours, in a thunderstorm, to find me. I knelt down to his level, fighting back tears. Oliver, honey, I need you to tell me something very important. What was your mother's name? Sarah Collins Thompson. He reached into the waterproof bag again and pulled out a marriage certificate. They got married when I was 2. Mom kept this in case anyone didn't believe her. The certificate was real. Daniel Thompson and Sarah Collins married in Portland, Maine 8 years ago. My son had been alive, had fallen in love, had raised this beautiful boy, and I'd never known. Oliver, did Danny ever talk about me? The boy nodded solemnly. All the time. He said you were the strongest person he ever knew, but that he made you really sad, and he didn't know how to fix it. He said he left because he was afraid he'd hurt you more than he already had. Those words hit me like a physical blow. All these years, I'd thought Danny left because he was angry at me for refusing to fund his business venture. I'd thought he chose his pride over our relationship, but he'd left because he was trying to protect me. Mom said Dad wanted to bring me to meet you, but he was scared you wouldn't forgive him. Then he got sick last year, and he died before he could work up the courage. My son was dead. The child I'd carried for 9 months, nursed through chicken pox and broken bones, taught to ride a bike and drive a car, he was gone. And I'd never gotten the chance to tell him that I forgave him long ago. "Oliver," I said, my voice breaking, "you're going to stay here with me. We're going to take care of each other, okay?" He nodded, fresh tears streaming down his face. "Grandma Maggie, that's what Dad said I should call you." "That sounds perfect." I pulled him into my arms, breathing in the scent of rain and childhood and the faint echo of my son. "But first, we need to call the hospital and find out about your mom." As I reached for my phone, Oliver grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "Grandma, there's something else Mom told me to tell you. Something about why Dad really left." The phone felt heavy in my other hand. "What is it?" "Sweetheart, she said Dad didn't leave because of the restaurant. He left because someone threatened to hurt you if he didn't disappear. And Mom thinks they might still be looking for him." The lights flickered as thunder crashed overhead, and I realized that Oliver's arrival wasn't just the answer to 12 years of questions. It was the beginning of a danger I never saw coming. I set my phone down carefully, my mind racing. "Oliver, what exactly did your mother tell you about these people who threatened your father?" He climbed onto my couch, still wrapped in the towel, looking impossibly small and vulnerable. "She said Dad owed money to some bad men before I was born." "Really bad men? When he couldn't pay them back, they said they'd hurt his family to teach him a lesson." My blood ran cold. Danny had always been impulsive with money, but I'd never imagined it was anything this serious. "Do you know how much money?" $200,000. Oliver said it matter-of-factly, as if it were pocket change. "Dad borrowed it to start some kind of business, but it didn't work out. Mom said the men told Dad that if he didn't pay them back with interest, they'd burn down your restaurant with you inside." I sank into my armchair, trying to process this information. 12 years ago, I'd thought Danny was being selfish when he asked me to sell Maggie's kitchen to fund his new venture. In reality, he'd been trying to save both our lives. "That's why he asked you to sell the restaurant," Oliver continued. "Not for his business, but to pay off the debt and keep you safe. When you said no, he knew the only way to protect you was to disappear so they couldn't find him." The guilt hit me like a tidal wave. My son had been desperate, terrified, trying to protect me, and I'd been too stubborn and hurt to see it. I'd let him walk away thinking I didn't trust him or believe in him. "Oliver, did your mom say if these men ever found your father?" He shook his head. "Dad was really careful. He changed his name to Daniel Collins when he married Mom. Took her last name instead of giving her his. They moved around a lot when I was little. Mom said they only settled down in Cedar Ridge because Dad got sick and couldn't travel anymore." Daniel Collins. My son had erased the Thompson name completely to keep me safe. The sacrifice of that gesture brought fresh tears to my eyes. I picked up my phone again. "I'm going to call the hospital now. We need to know about your mother." The call to Cedar Ridge Medical Center took 20 minutes of being transferred between departments before I finally reached someone who could help. The news wasn't good. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson," the nurse said gently. "Sarah Collins passed away yesterday afternoon. She'd been asking for someone named Oliver, but we had no emergency contacts on file except a grandmother in Millbrook." I looked at this brave little boy who'd just lost his mother and had no idea yet. Was she in pain?" "No, ma'am. The cancer had spread, but she was comfortable at the end. She left some personal effects. We've been waiting for family to claim them." Cancer. Sarah had been dying, and she'd used her last strength to make sure Oliver found his way to safety. After I hung up, I sat beside Oliver on the couch. "Sweetheart, I need to tell you something about your mom." He looked up at me with those wise, sad eyes. "She's not coming back, is she?" "No, honey, she's not. But she loved you so much that she made sure you'd be safe. She made sure you'd find me." Oliver nodded, tears flowing freely now. "She told me that might happen. She said you'd take care of me like you took care of Dad when he was little." I pulled him close, marveling at his strength. "I will, Oliver. I promise. But first, we need to be very careful. If these dangerous men are still looking for your father, and they find out about you, they'll know Dad had a family," Oliver finished. "Mom thought about that too. She said we should go to the police." I considered this. My brother-in-law, Jim, was a retired state trooper. He'd know what to do, who to trust. But something nagged at me. "Oliver, how did your mother know so much about your father's problems?" Did he tell her everything? Not at first. Mom figured it out when I was about 5. Dad got really sick one day. Not the cancer, something else. And he was talking in his sleep. He kept saying he was sorry for bringing danger to us, that he should have stayed away from Maggie's kitchen, my restaurant. After all these years, it was still at the center of this nightmare. When Dad got better, Mom made him tell her everything. About the debt, about the threats, about why he really left you. That's when she hired a private investigator to find out who these men were and if they were still dangerous. A private investigator. Sarah had been more thorough than I'd given her credit for. The investigator said the men Dad borrowed from were part of some kind of organized crime thing. Really dangerous people. Organized crime. In Maine. It seemed impossible, but I'd read enough news stories to know that criminal enterprises existed everywhere. Even in small towns like ours. Did the investigator have names? Any specific information? Oliver reached into his backpack again and pulled out a manila envelope. Mom gave me this to give to you. She said it has everything you need to know. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. Inside were dozens of photographs, documents, and a typed report from Brennan Investigations in Portland. The top page made my stomach lurch. Subject: Daniel Thompson Daniel Collins. Creditor: Vincent Caruso, associated with Caruso Construction and Loan Services. I knew that name. Vincent Caruso had been sniffing around local businesses for years, offering loans to struggling establishments at rates that seemed too good to be true. Several business owners in town had accepted his help. The ones who couldn't pay back the loans had their establishments mysteriously burned down or get vandalized until they sold to Caruso's shell companies. Oh, God, I whispered. Oliver, this man. I think he's been operating here in Millbrook for years. What do you mean? There's been a pattern of businesses closing or being sold under suspicious circumstances. I always thought it was just bad luck or the economy. But what if it was Vincent Caruso systematically taking over the town? I flipped through more pages of the report. The investigator had been thorough. Caruso's operation was sophisticated. Legitimate construction business on the surface, predatory lending and property acquisition underneath. They targeted family businesses with long histories in their communities, knowing that emotional attachment would make owners desperate enough to accept bad loans. Grandma, Oliver said quietly, Mom made me memorize something important. She said if anything happened to her, I should tell you that Vincent Caruso's people bought the building next to your restaurant 2 years ago, just before Dad got sick. My heart stopped. The old hardware store next to Maggie's kitchen had been empty for years. I'd heard it sold, but hadn't paid attention to who bought it. Why would that matter? Because Mom's investigator found out that Caruso always buys properties next to his targets first. Then he uses those properties to create accidents that force his targets to sell. I thought about the strange issues I'd been having lately at the restaurant. The mysterious water leak that had damaged my kitchen ceiling. The electrical problems that kept shutting down my freezers. The weird smell coming from the basement that I couldn't identify. Oliver, I think Vincent Caruso has been targeting my restaurant, and if he finds out that you're Danny's son, he'll know Dad had family here, Oliver finished. And he'll use me to force you to sell. The implications were terrifying. This wasn't just about an old debt anymore. Caruso had been playing a long game, and now we were both trapped in it. I stood up, my mind racing. We need to leave. Tonight. We can go to my brother-in-law's house in Augusta. He'll know how to handle this. But as I moved toward the window to check if it was safe to leave, I froze. A black sedan was parked across the street, its engine running. In the dim streetlight, I could make out the silhouette of someone sitting in the driver's seat. Oliver, I whispered, how did you get to my house tonight? Did anyone see you? His face went pale. I asked for directions at the gas station on Route 9. The man there said he knew where Margaret Thompson lived and offered to drive me, but I said no. But Grandma, I think he followed me anyway. The black sedan's headlights suddenly flicked on, illuminating my front yard like a stage. We weren't just in danger. We were already being watched. Get away from the window, I hissed, grabbing Oliver's hand and pulling him toward the back of the house. My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure whoever was in that car could hear it from across the street. We crouched in my kitchen, and I carefully peered through the corner of the window. The black sedan was still there, motionless as a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Grandma, what are we going to do? Oliver whispered. Good question. I'd been a restaurant owner for 35 years, not some action hero. But this child was depending on me, and I'd be damned if I'd let Vincent Caruso's thugs hurt my grandson. We're going to be smarter than they are, I said, surprised by the determination in my own voice. Oliver, is there anything else in that envelope I should know about? He nodded, pulling out a cell phone. Mom gave me this. She said there are important phone numbers in it and that the red button calls someone who can help us. I turned on the phone. The contacts list was short but revealing. Sarah had been more prepared than I'd given her credit for. There were numbers for FBI agents, state police, and someone listed simply as Guardian Angel. Who's Guardian Angel? I don't know. Mom just said if we were ever in real trouble, that person would help us disappear until it was safe. Smart woman. Sarah had created an escape plan for this exact scenario. I was about to press the red button when my own phone rang. The caller ID made my blood freeze. Maggie's Kitchen. Someone was calling me from my restaurant. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mrs. Thompson? The voice was smooth, almost friendly. My name is Vincent Caruso. I believe you have something that belongs to me. I'd never spoken to this man before, but I knew instantly that I was talking to the person who'd terrorized my son for 12 years. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Of course you do. A little boy showed up at your house tonight. He's the son of someone who owed me a considerable debt. I looked at Oliver, whose face had gone white. He'd heard enough to know who was on the phone. I don't have any children visiting me. I lied. Caruso chuckled. Mrs. Thompson, I'm standing in your restaurant right now. Beautiful place. Real family atmosphere. It would be a shame if something happened to it. He was inside Maggie's Kitchen, the restaurant my parents had built, where I'd spent my entire adult life, where every table and chair held memories of customers who'd become family. The violation of it made me want to scream. What do you want? I asked. Simple. The boy comes with me, and we'll consider his father's debt paid in full. You'll never see me again, and your lovely restaurant will remain exactly as it is. Over my dead body. That can be arranged too, Mrs. Thompson. But it doesn't have to be. I'm actually quite fond of family establishments like yours. They have such character, such history. It would be unfortunate to lose all that too. Say, an electrical fire. The threat was clear. Give him Oliver or lose everything, including possibly my life. I need time to think about this. You have until sunrise. That gives you about 6 hours. I'll be waiting. The line went dead. I stood there shaking, realizing that Vincent Caruso wasn't just some small-time criminal. He was sophisticated, patient, and absolutely ruthless. What did he say? Oliver asked. I knelt down to his level. He wants you to come with him. He says if you do, he'll leave me alone. Oliver's chin lifted in a gesture so reminiscent of Danny that it took my breath away. I'm not going anywhere with him. Dad died to keep me away from men like that. Honey, this isn't your choice to make. I'm the adult here. No, Oliver said firmly. Mom made me promise something else. She made me promise that I'd never let Vincent Caruso get me, no matter what. She said if he gets me, he'll use me to hurt other people. She said some promises are more important than being safe. This 10-year-old boy was braver than most adults I knew, but bravery wouldn't stop bullets or fires. I looked at Sarah's phone again, my finger hovering over the red button. Oliver, if we call Guardian Angel, we might have to leave everything behind. My restaurant, my house, my whole life here. Are you prepared for that? Are you? He asked. It was a fair question. Maggie's Kitchen wasn't just my business. It was my identity, my legacy, my connection to my parents, and my history with Danny. Losing it would be like losing a piece of my soul. But looking at this remarkable boy, I realized that protecting him was more important than preserving the past. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. I pressed the red button. The phone was answered on the first ring by a woman with a crisp, professional voice. This is Rachel. Are you in immediate danger? Yes. Vincent Caruso has threatened my grandson and my business. He's given us until sunrise to turn the boy over to him. Understood. Give me your exact location and stay away from windows. Help is coming. I gave her my address, then added, He's inside my restaurant right now. Maggie's Kitchen on Main Street. We know about Vincent Caruso, Rachel said grimly. We've been building a case against him for 3 years. If you're willing to help us, we can end this tonight. What do you need from us? Courage and a little bit of acting. Can you handle that? I looked at Oliver, who nodded resolutely. My grandson had more courage in his little finger than most people had in their entire bodies. We can handle it. Good. In about 10 minutes, a man named Agent Travis will knock on your back door. He'll show you a badge with the number 4471. Don't let anyone else in. We're going to use Vincent Caruso's greed against him. After she hung up, I gathered some essentials into a bag. Important documents. Some cash I kept hidden in the freezer, and a few precious photos of Danny as a child. "Grandma," Oliver said, "what if this doesn't work? What if something happens to you?" I sat beside him, taking his small hands in mine. "Oliver, your father was one of the bravest people I ever knew. He spent 12 years protecting both of us from a distance. Now it's our turn to be brave. But whatever happens, I want you to know that meeting you tonight has been the greatest gift of my life." He hugged me tightly. "I love you, Grandma Maggie." "I love you too, sweetheart." A soft knock came at the back door, 3 short taps, then 2 long ones. "Agent Travis," right on schedule. I opened the door to find a man in his 40s with kind eyes and a badge displaying the number 4471. "Mrs. Thompson, we don't have much time. Vincent Caruso just called in 3 more men. They're surrounding the house." Through the kitchen window, I could see shapes moving in the darkness. We were trapped, but somehow I wasn't afraid anymore. Sarah had prepared for this, Rachel had a plan, and I had a grandson worth fighting for. "What do you need us to do?" I asked. Agent Travis smiled grimly. "We need you to walk out that front door and give Vincent Caruso exactly what he thinks he wants." Agent Travis spread a map of my neighborhood across my kitchen table, his pen marking positions with military precision. "Caruso has 4 men positioned around your house. He's confident he has you trapped, which is exactly what we want." I studied the map, my restaurant owner's mind automatically calculating angles and timing like I was planning the evening rush. How does walking into his trap help us? Because Vincent Caruso has been very careful for 3 years. He never directly commits crimes himself. He always uses intermediaries, shell companies, and verbal threats that can't be proven in court. Tonight, he's so confident that he's here personally, making direct threats, holding stolen property. "Stolen property?" Oliver asked. Agent Travis nodded. "Your restaurant keys, which he took when he broke into Maggie's kitchen. Breaking and entering, theft, extortion, kidnapping threats. If we can get him on record making those charges stick, we can connect him to 3 years' worth of similar crimes across 3 counties. I understood. "You want to record him? Oliver will be wearing a wire. The conversation between you and Caruso will be captured from multiple angles by agents positioned in the area. When he explicitly demands the boy in exchange for not burning down your restaurant, we'll have everything we need." "No," I said immediately. "I'm not putting Oliver at that kind of risk." "Grandma," Oliver said quietly, "if we don't stop him tonight, he'll just keep coming. And he'll hurt other kids like me, other families like ours." This boy was 10 years old and talking like a seasoned investigator. I wondered what other horrors Sarah had prepared him for. Agent Travis checked his watch. "You have about 3 hours until sunrise. Here's what we're going to do. Mrs. Thompson, you'll call Caruso and tell him you're ready to make the exchange. You'll meet him in front of your restaurant, public space, multiple escape routes for us, and it gets him away from his current advantage position." "What if he refuses to come out?" "He won't. Caruso's ego is his weakness. He wants to see you broken, wants to watch you hand over your grandson in defeat. He'll come." I looked at Oliver, marveling at his calm composure. "Sweetheart, are you sure about this? We could still call Guardian Angel and disappear. Mom always said Dad's biggest regret was running away instead of fighting. She said if we ever got the chance to stop Vincent Caruso, we should take it." Oliver's jaw set with that familiar Thompson stubbornness. "Besides, I want him to pay for what he did to Dad." Agent Travis attached a tiny microphone to Oliver's collar, then showed me the backup panic button I'd carry. "If anything goes wrong, press this. We'll move in immediately." "Define wrong," I said, because I'd learned that details matter when your life is on the line. "If Caruso tries to physically take Oliver before we have sufficient recorded evidence, if he threatens immediate violence against either of you, if he tries to move you to a secondary location, I nodded, tucking the panic button into my jacket pocket. What happens after you arrest him? Caruso's operation will collapse. The other business owners he's been targeting will be safe. The properties he's stolen will be returned to their rightful owners. And Oliver will never have to worry about his father's debt again. It sounded too good to be true, but Agent Travis had the confidence of someone who'd done this before. I called Vincent Caruso from my landline, knowing he'd probably expect that. "Mrs. Thompson?" His smooth voice answered. "I was hoping to hear from you." "I want to make a deal," I said, letting exhaustion creep into my voice. It wasn't hard to fake. I was genuinely tired from years of not knowing what happened to Danny. "I'm listening. You get the boy, but the exchange happens at my restaurant. I want to say goodbye to the place before you destroy it anyway." Caruso chuckled. "Sentimental. I like that in business owners. It makes negotiations so much simpler. 1 hour, Mrs. Thompson. Come alone with the boy. How do I know you'll keep your word about leaving me alone after this? Because I'm a businessman, not a monster. Once our transaction is complete, you'll never see me again." Liar. Men like Vincent Caruso didn't leave witnesses. After hanging up, I made 2 more calls. The first was to my brother-in-law Jim, leaving a voicemail that if anything happened to me, Oliver was his responsibility and he should contact Agent Travis. The second call was to my insurance company's 24-hour hotline, reporting that I'd noticed some suspicious activity around my restaurant and wanted it documented in case of vandalism. Not that I expected to need the insurance, but Sarah had taught me to plan for every possibility. "Ready?" Agent Travis asked. Oliver straightened his shoulders. "Ready." As we prepared to leave, I grabbed one more thing, the cast-iron skillet my mother had used in the original restaurant. It had been hanging on my kitchen wall for 20 years, but tonight it was going back to work. "Mrs. Thompson, this isn't a gunfight," Agent Travis warned. "No," I agreed. "It's a family protecting itself." "There's a difference." We walked out my front door at 4:17 a.m., heading toward what I hoped would be the end of Vincent Caruso's reign of terror. The black sedan followed us at a distance, just as Agent Travis had predicted. Main Street was eerily quiet, lit only by the old-fashioned street lamps that gave Millbrook its Norman Rockwell charm. In a few hours, the street would be bustling with morning commuters, stopping by Maggie's Kitchen for coffee and my famous blueberry muffins. If there was still a Maggie's Kitchen by sunrise. Vincent Caruso was waiting for us, standing casually in front of my restaurant like he owned the place, which I realized was probably his ultimate goal. He was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 5'8", with perfectly styled gray hair and an expensive coat that probably cost more than most people made in a month. He looked like a successful businessman, not a criminal, which was probably the point. "Mrs. Thompson," he said warmly, extending his hand as if we were meeting for a pleasant business lunch. "And you must be Oliver. You look just like your father." Oliver stepped slightly behind me, but his voice was steady. "You killed my dad." Caruso's smile never wavered. "Your father killed himself. Boy, he chose to run instead of facing his responsibilities. Very disappointing." "His responsibility was protecting his family from people like you," I said. "People like me keep this world running smoothly, Mrs. Thompson. We provide services that banks won't, opportunities that traditional businesses can't. Your son understood that when he accepted my loan." I could see Agent Travis's van parked halfway down the block, close enough to record everything but far enough away to avoid suspicion. "You threatened to burn down my restaurant if Danny didn't pay you back," I said, making sure my voice carried clearly. "I threatened to remove an obstacle to progress. This entire street could be so much more profitable with the right development. But sometimes family businesses like yours stand in the way of progress." There it was. Recorded confession to extortion. "And now you want Oliver in exchange for leaving my restaurant alone," I continued. Caruso's eyes gleamed. "The boy represents insurance. His father owed me $200,000 plus 12 years of interest. That comes to approximately $500,000. Oliver will work off that debt. He's 10 years old. He'll grow, and he'll remember the importance of honoring one's obligations. Child labor, human trafficking. The charges were adding up. I looked down at Oliver, who nodded almost imperceptibly. We'd gotten what Agent Travis needed. "Mr. Caruso," I said, pulling the panic button from my pocket. "I have a counteroffer for you." His eyebrows rose with interest. "Oh? Go to hell. I pressed the button. The next 60 seconds unfolded like a choreographed dance of justice that I'll remember for the rest of my life. Agent Travis's van doors burst open, and suddenly, Main Street was flooded with FBI agents wearing tactical gear. The black sedan that had been following us found itself boxed in by two unmarked cars that seemed to materialize from nowhere. Vincent Caruso's composed businessman facade cracked instantly. "What is this?" "Vincent Caruso," Agent Travis announced, approaching with his badge raised. "You're under arrest for extortion, kidnapping threats, conspiracy to commit arson, and violation of federal racketeering statutes." I watched with deep satisfaction as Caruso's perfectly styled appearance became disheveled. His expensive coat couldn't hide the fact that he was just another criminal who'd finally been caught. "I want my lawyer," Caruso snarled, but his eyes were darting around desperately, looking for escape routes that didn't exist. "You'll get your phone call," Agent Travis replied, securing handcuffs. "Right after we finish processing this crime scene." Other agents were escorting Caruso's men from their positions around the neighborhood. I counted 5 arrests total, including the driver of the black sedan who'd apparently been watching my house for weeks. "Grandma," Oliver said quietly, "is it really over?" Before I could answer, Agent Travis approached us with a tablet showing an audio waveform. "We got everything. Caruso's confession will connect him to at least 15 other business takeovers across 3 counties. You both did incredibly well." The relief was overwhelming. For the first time in 12 years, the shadow hanging over my family was finally gone. As the sun began to rise over Main Street, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I unlocked Maggie's kitchen and invited Agent Travis and Oliver inside for coffee. My restaurant looked exactly as it should, warm, welcoming, unchanged by Caruso's brief occupation. "There's something you should know," Agent Travis said as I started the coffee maker. "Vincent Caruso's operation was larger than we initially realized. We found evidence that he's been targeting family businesses specifically because they represent community stability. He wanted to own entire downtown areas. I thought about all the business owners who'd struggled over the past few years, who'd accepted his loans or sold their properties under mysterious circumstances. How many people did we help by stopping him? At least 60 families across central Maine. Property titles will be returned, predatory loans will be forgiven, and several businesses that were forced to close will be able to reopen." Oliver was exploring the restaurant with wide eyes, running his hands along the counter where his father had eaten breakfast countless times as a child. "Dad told me about this place," he said. "He said you made the best blueberry pancakes in the world. Would you like to try some?" I asked. His face lit up. "Can I help make them?" And that's how Oliver Thompson and I celebrated the end of Vincent Caruso's terror, by cooking together in the kitchen where his father had learned to crack eggs and flip pancakes 30 years earlier. As I watched Oliver carefully measure flour, his tongue poking out in concentration, just like Danny used to do, I realized that Sarah had given me more than just safety when she sent him to find me. She'd given me a chance to be the grandmother I'd always dreamed of being. "Agent Travis," I said as he finished his coffee, "what happens now? Is Oliver safe to stay with me permanently?" "Caruso will be in federal prison for the next 20 to 30 years. His organization is completely dismantled. Oliver is as safe as any child in America." He smiled. "Though you'll probably want to make the custody arrangement official through family court." I looked at Oliver, who was proudly flipping his first pancake. "Would you like that, sweetheart? Would you like to live here with me permanently?" "Yes, please," he said without hesitation. "This feels like home." 3 months later, Oliver's legal guardianship was finalized. He'd started school in Millbrook, where his intelligence and determination quickly made him a teacher favorite. His nightmares had faded, replaced by stories about his new friends and excitement about helping me run the restaurant on weekends. The dining room wall now featured a new addition, a framed photograph of Danny, Sarah, and Oliver, right next to the pictures of all the other families who'd been part of Maggie's Kitchen's history. I'd also added something else, a small plaque that read, "In memory of Daniel Thompson, who protected his family until the very end." Oliver had suggested the wording. He said his father would like being remembered as a protector rather than a victim. Business was better than ever. The story of how a grandmother and her grandson had helped bring down a criminal organization had spread throughout Maine. drawing customers from hours away who wanted to eat at the Brave Ladies restaurant. I didn't feel particularly brave. I felt grateful. Grateful that Sarah had trusted me with her most precious gift. Grateful that Oliver had the courage to find me in the storm. Grateful that Agent Travis and his team had been building their case long before we'd needed them. And grateful that Danny, wherever he was, knew that his son was safe and loved. But as I learned 6 months later, gratitude can be a dangerous emotion when it makes you careless about new threats. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, addressed to Mrs. Margaret Thompson and Oliver Thompson. The return address was a law office in Portland I'd never heard of. Inside was a single sheet of legal letterhead that made my blood run cold. Mrs. Thompson, we represent the estate of Sarah Collins Thompson. It has come to our attention that Oliver Thompson is residing with you without proper legal authority. Ms. Thompson's will specifically designates her sister, Linda Collins, as Oliver's guardian in the event of her death. We demand Oliver's immediate return to his rightful family. I read the letter 3 times, my hands shaking more with each reading. Oliver had an aunt. Sarah had family who wanted him. And I might lose my grandson before I'd truly found him. I stared at the legal letter until the words blurred together, my mind racing through possibilities I didn't want to consider. Oliver was in school, safely unaware that our newfound stability was being threatened by a relative we'd never heard of. My first call was to Jim, my brother-in-law. As a retired state trooper, he'd dealt with custody disputes before. "Maggie, calm down and read me the letter word for word," he said after I'd explained the situation in a panic. I read it twice, and he was quiet for a long moment. "Something doesn't smell right," Jim finally said. "If Sarah had a sister who was supposed to get custody, why didn't this Linda Collins come forward when Sarah died? Why wait 6 months? Good question. I'd been so panicked by the threat of losing Oliver that I hadn't thought to question the timing. Also, Jim continued, if this Linda Collins was named in Sarah's will, why didn't the hospital or social services contact her when Sarah died? They would have been legally required to follow the will's instructions. My panic began shifting to suspicion. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking you need to call that law office and demand to see the original will, along with proof that Linda Collins is actually Sarah's sister. Don't let them pressure you into handing over Oliver until you've verified everything." I called the law office immediately. The receptionist was professionally polite, but couldn't provide any information over the phone. "You'll need to come in for a meeting," she said. "Mr. Harrison can see you Thursday at 2 o'clock. "I want to bring my own attorney," I said. There was a pause. "That's your right, Mrs. Thompson, but Mr. Harrison hopes this can be resolved amicably without unnecessary legal complications." The implied threat was clear. Cooperate, or this gets messy. I spent the rest of the day researching Linda Collins online. What I found was troubling. There were several Linda Collins in Maine, but none who seemed connected to Sarah or Oliver. No social media profiles mentioned a deceased sister or a nephew. No public records linked any Linda Collins to Cedar Ridge or the surrounding area. When Oliver came home from school that afternoon, I faced a dilemma. Should I tell him about the letter and risk scaring him, or handle this quietly and potentially blindside him if things went wrong? I chose honesty. "Oliver, I received a letter today from someone who claims to be your mother's sister. She says she wants custody of you." His face went pale. "I don't have an aunt. Mom would have told me." "That's what I thought too. But I want to be sure. Do you remember your mom ever mentioning any family? Anyone at all?" Oliver shook his head emphatically. "Mom said it was just her and Dad and me. She said her parents died when she was young, and she didn't have any brothers or sisters. She said that's why family was so important, because we only had each other." This was looking more and more like a scam. But who would try to steal a child, and why? The answer came to me with chilling clarity. Vincent Caruso. Even from federal prison, he could still reach out through associates, lawyers, or family members. What better revenge against the people who destroyed his operation than to take away what they loved most? I called Agent Travis immediately. "Mrs. Thompson, Vincent Caruso is in solitary confinement in a maximum security federal facility," he assured me. "He has no access to outside communications except monitored calls with his attorney." "What about his family? Associates? Other people in his organization?" Agent Travis was quiet for a moment. We arrested everyone in his immediate circle, but organized crime families run deep. Let me look into this Linda Collins situation. Can you send me a copy of the letter? I photographed the letter and sent it to Agent Travis, then began my own investigation. If someone was targeting Oliver, I needed to know who and why. That evening, I called Cedar Ridge Medical Center and asked to speak with the social worker who'd handled Sarah's case. Mrs. Patterson, the woman said when I finally reached her. Sarah Collins was very specific about her wishes. She said she had no living family except her son, and that if anything happened to her, Oliver should be placed with his paternal grandmother in Millbrook. Did she ever mention a sister named Linda? Absolutely not. In fact, she was quite clear that she was an only child. We have documentation of that conversation, because we always verify family information for our records. The pieces were falling into place. Someone was using legal intimidation to try to separate Oliver from me, probably hoping that a small-town restaurant owner wouldn't have the resources to fight back. They were wrong. Thursday's meeting with Mr. Harrison was scheduled for 2 o'clock, but I arrived at his office an hour early with my own attorney, Patricia Donnelly, Jim's daughter-in-law and one of the most aggressive family law attorneys in the state. The law office was impressive. Marble floors, mahogany furniture, oil paintings that probably cost more than most people's cars. Mr. Harrison himself was a distinguished man in his 60s, with silver hair and an expensive suit. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, extending his hand, "thank you for coming. I know this is a difficult situation." "It certainly is," Patricia replied before I could speak. "My client is curious about how Ms. Linda Collins learned about Oliver's existence, given that she apparently didn't know about her sister's death until 6 months after the fact." Mr. Harrison's smile faltered slightly. "Family relationships can be complicated. Sometimes estranged relatives only learn about tragic events through indirect channels." "Such as?" Patricia pressed. "I'm not at liberty to discuss my client's personal circumstances." Patricia opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Mr. Harrison, we've done our own investigation into this matter. We found no evidence that Sarah Collins had any living siblings. We have documentation from Cedar Ridge Medical Center confirming that Sarah explicitly stated she was an only child. And we have evidence that someone has been making inquiries about Oliver Thompson's whereabouts through channels connected to organized crime figures." The color drained from Mr. Harrison's face. "I assure you, Mrs. Donnelly, my client is a legitimate family member seeking custody of her deceased sister's child." "Then you won't mind providing us with the original will, birth certificates proving the family relationship, and your client's contact information so we can speak with her directly," Patricia replied smoothly. Mr. Harrison shifted uncomfortably. "I'll need time to gather those documents." "How much time?" "Because my client has legal guardianship of Oliver Thompson, and we're not inclined to disrupt his stability based on unsubstantiated claims." "1 week," Mr. Harrison said quickly. Patricia stood up. "You have 48 hours. If we don't receive comprehensive documentation proving your client's identity and legal standing, we'll be filing a complaint with the State Bar Association regarding fraudulent custody claims." As we left the office, I felt a grim satisfaction. Whoever was behind this scheme had underestimated what they were up against. But my satisfaction turned to fear that evening when I found Oliver's bedroom window open and a note on his pillow. Legal channels didn't work. Now we try a different approach. Oliver was at soccer practice. He was supposed to be home an hour ago. I called the school, my hands shaking as I dialed. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson," the secretary said. "Soccer practice was canceled today due to the field flooding. The children were dismissed at regular time." Oliver had been missing for 3 hours, and I'd never noticed because I'd been too focused on legal battles to pay attention to what really mattered, keeping my grandson safe. I called 911 first, then Agent Travis, then Jim, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial the numbers. Within 20 minutes, my house was filled with law enforcement officers treating Oliver's disappearance as a kidnapping. "Mrs. Thompson, we need you to think carefully," Detective Maria Santos said as she examined Oliver's bedroom. "Has he mentioned any new friends lately? Anyone who's been paying him unusual attention?" I forced myself to focus, despite the panic clawing at my chest. "No, Oliver's very cautious around strangers. His mother taught him to be." Agent Travis arrived with a team of federal agents. The local police were already canvassing the neighborhood, showing Oliver's school photo to anyone who might have seen something. "We're treating this as connected to the Vincent Caruso case," Agent Travis announced. "This has all the hallmarks of organized crime retaliation." "But you said Caruso was in solitary confinement," I protested. "He is, but that doesn't mean his family or associates aren't acting on his behalf." Detective Santos found something that made my heart stop. "Mrs. Thompson, does Oliver wear any kind of medical alert bracelet or tracker?" "No, why?" She held up a small electronic device that looked like a hearing aid battery. "We found this under his bed. It's a GPS tracker. Someone's been monitoring his movements for weeks, possibly months." The violation was staggering. While I'd thought we were safe, someone had been watching Oliver constantly, learning his routines, planning this moment. My phone rang. Unknown number. Agent Travis nodded for me to answer it on speaker. "Mrs. Thompson," a woman's voice said. "My name is Linda Collins. I believe we need to talk." "Where is my grandson?" I demanded. "Oliver is safe. He's with family who actually care about his well-being, not someone who uses him to get attention and publicity." The accusation stung because there was a grain of truth to it. The media attention from the Caruso case had brought customers to the restaurant, though that had never been my motivation. "What do you want?" "I want what was always rightfully mine. Sarah promised that if anything happened to her, I would raise Oliver. You stole him from me." Agent Travis was furiously typing on his phone, probably trying to trace the call. "If you're really Sarah's sister, prove it," I said. "Tell me something only family would know." There was a pause. "Sarah had a birthmark on her left shoulder, shaped like a crescent moon. She was allergic to shellfish. Her favorite song was Sweet Caroline, because our father used to sing it to her." My heart sank. Those details were specific enough to be real, but something still felt wrong. "Where have you been for the past 6 months, while Oliver was grieving his mother's death?" "I was in Europe on business. I only learned about Sarah's death last month when I returned. It took time to locate Oliver and understand what had happened." Agent Travis held up his phone, showing me a message. "Call is bouncing through multiple towers. She's moving." "Linda," I said, "I want to see Oliver. I want to know he's safe. You can see him when you sign the custody transfer papers." "I'm not unreasonable, Mrs. Thompson. I know Oliver has grown attached to you. You can have visitation rights." Visitation rights. To see my own grandson like he was someone else's child. "I need time to think about this. You have until midnight tonight. After that, Oliver and I will disappear, and you'll never see him again." The line went dead. Agent Travis looked grim. "The call came from somewhere within a 50-mile radius, but she's using sophisticated equipment to mask her exact location." "What kind of equipment?" I asked. "The kind that requires money and technical knowledge? Professional-grade stuff?" Detective Santos was studying the GPS tracker. "This is expensive too. We're not dealing with an amateur kidnapper." I sank into my kitchen chair, overwhelmed by the complexity of the situation. Could this really be Sarah's sister? Could Oliver have family I didn't know about? "It's possible," Agent Travis admitted, "but the timing is suspicious. Why surface now? Why not go through proper legal channels? And why kidnap Oliver instead of filing for custody?" My phone buzzed with a text from the same unknown number. A photo of Oliver sitting in what looked like a restaurant booth, eating ice cream. He appeared unharmed but subdued. Another text followed. "Midnight, alone. Parking lot behind your restaurant. Bring signed custody papers, or Oliver disappears forever." Agent Travis examined the photo. "The background looks familiar. This might be the old diner on Route 202, about 30 miles from here. It's been closed for years. We can have teams there in an hour," Detective Santos said. "No," Agent Travis shook his head. "If this is connected to Caruso's people, they'll have surveillance and escape routes planned. We need to be smarter." I looked at both of them. "What if I just go? What if I meet her demands?" "Absolutely not," Agent Travis said firmly. "Even if this woman is legitimately Sarah's sister, she's committed kidnapping. We can't reward that behavior. But what if she really will disappear with Oliver?" Agent Travis was quiet for a moment. "Mrs. Thompson, in my experience, people who kidnap children and make ultimatums are rarely satisfied with their initial demands. Even if you sign custody papers, what's to stop her from deciding you're a threat who needs to be eliminated?" The thought that someone might kill me to keep Oliver had never occurred to me, but it made terrible sense. So what do? Detective Santos and Agent Travis exchanged glances. We give her what she wants, Agent Travis said finally. But we do it on our terms. Over the next few hours, they explained the plan. I would go to the meeting, but I'd be wearing a wire and GPS tracker. Federal agents would be positioned throughout the area, and the moment Oliver was safe, they'd move in. What if she really is his aunt? I asked. What if I'm the one in the wrong here? Then we'll sort it out legally, after Oliver is safe, Agent Travis assured me. But Mrs. Thompson, based on everything we've learned, I don't think this woman is who she claims to be. At 11:30 p.m., I drove toward the old diner on Route 202 with my heart pounding so hard I was sure it would interfere with the wire I was wearing. The night was dark and moonless, perfect for criminal activity. The diner's parking lot was empty except for a single car, a white sedan with tinted windows. I parked 30 feet away and waited. At exactly midnight, the sedan's headlights flashed twice. I got out of my car and walked toward it, every step feeling like it might be my last. The back door of the sedan opened, and Oliver climbed out. "Grandma Maggie," he called, starting to run toward me. "Stay where you are, Oliver," a woman's voice commanded from inside the car. Oliver stopped obediently, but I could see the fear in his posture. A woman emerged from the passenger side. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with auburn hair similar to Sarah's. For a moment, I wondered if this really could be Oliver's aunt. Then she spoke, and her voice was different from the phone calls. Younger, more nervous. "Mrs. Thompson, do you have the papers?" I held up the folder Agent Travis had prepared, fake custody transfer documents that looked official but were legally meaningless. "I want to hug my grandson first," I said. The woman hesitated, then nodded. Quickly, Oliver ran to me, and I hugged him tightly. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" "I'm scared, Grandma," he whispered. "She says she's Mom's sister, but she doesn't know things about Mom that a sister should know." Smart boy. Even in danger, he was gathering intelligence. "What kind of things?" I whispered back. "She didn't know Mom's middle name. She didn't know Mom was left-handed. And Grandma," Oliver's voice was barely audible, "she called me by the wrong name twice. She called me Danny." My blood ran cold. This woman wasn't Linda Collins, and she definitely wasn't Sarah's sister. She was someone connected to Vincent Caruso who knew about Danny. Someone who'd been watching our family long enough to know personal details, but not long enough to know them correctly. Someone who'd just made a fatal mistake. I squeezed Oliver's hand in the signal Agent Travis had taught us, then stepped back. "Linda," I said loudly enough for the wire to pick up clearly, "I have a question for you. What was Sarah's middle name before she married Danny?" The woman froze. It was a simple question that any sister would know instantly. "It was Rose, of course," she said. Wrong answer. Sarah's middle name had been Elizabeth. It was on Oliver's birth certificate and all the hospital records. I pressed the panic button Agent Travis had given me. The fake Linda Collins realized her mistake the moment she saw my expression change. "You know, I'm not who I claim to be," she said, no longer bothering to maintain the pretense. "Who are you really?" I demanded, pulling Oliver closer to me. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Someone who's owed a very large debt. Vincent Caruso was more than just a business partner to my family. He was going to be my husband, Vincent Caruso's fiancé. That explained the sophisticated equipment, the detailed knowledge of our situation, and the personal vendetta. What's your real name?" "Angela Rossetti. And Vincent is going to prison for the rest of his life because of you and that boy." In the distance, I could hear the faint sound of vehicles approaching, but Angela was too focused on her revenge to notice. "Vincent borrowed money from my father's organization to fund his main operations," she continued. "When you destroyed his business, my father lost millions. Now the only way to recover that money is to liquidate Vincent's remaining assets." "What assets?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand with growing horror. "You," Angela said simply. "Your restaurant is worth about $200,000. Your house, another $150. Oliver represents ongoing value. There are people who pay very well for children with his particular background." She was talking about human trafficking. "My grandson wasn't just kidnapped. He was being sold. The debt your son incurred has been growing for 12 years, Angela continued. With interest and penalties, it's now worth approximately $1.2 million. You and Oliver together should cover most of that. Over my dead body. That can be arranged too. Dead restaurant owners sometimes have tragic accidents that result in very generous insurance payouts. Oliver squeezed my hand, and I realized he was trembling, not with fear, but with anger. My dad didn't owe your family anything, he said, his young voice carrying surprising authority. He borrowed money from Vincent Caruso. Not from you, Angela laughed. Your father was an idiot who thought he could disappear and avoid his obligations. Now his family pays the price. Actually, a new voice said from the darkness, I think the only one paying a price tonight will be you. Agent Travis stepped into the circle of light from the car's headlights, his weapon drawn. Behind him, I could see other federal agents taking positions around the parking lot. Angela's hand moved toward her purse, but Agent Travis's voice stopped her. Don't. We know you're armed, Ms. Rossetti, but you're surrounded by federal agents with night vision and superior firepower. Your best option is to surrender peacefully. For a moment, I thought she might comply. Then her expression hardened into something truly frightening. If I can't have Vincent, and I can't recover my father's money, then at least I can make sure the people who destroyed my life pay for it. She pulled a gun from her purse, but instead of pointing it at Agent Travis, she aimed it at Oliver. Everyone backs away, or the boy dies. Agent Travis kept his weapon trained on her, but I could see the calculation in his eyes. At this distance, even if he shot her, she might still be able to pull the trigger. Angela, I said. Stepping slightly in front of Oliver. You don't want to hurt a child. That's not who you are. You don't know anything about who I am, she snarled. I've spent my entire adult life cleaning up messes created by people like your son. Weak people who take what they can't pay for and then run away when consequences arrive. Danny didn't run away to avoid consequences, I said. He ran away to protect his family. There's a difference. The only difference is that running away delayed the inevitable. His debt was always going to come due. Oliver stepped out from behind me, his chin lifted with that familiar Thompson defiance. You're wrong, he said clearly. My dad didn't run away. He built a new life. He became a better person. He raised me to be brave and honest and to protect people who need help. Everything you are is everything he chose not to be. Angela's hand was shaking now. Whether from anger or stress, I couldn't tell. Your father was a coward and a thief. My father was a hero, Oliver replied. And I'm proud to be his son. Agent Travis took advantage of Angela's focus on Oliver to move closer, but she noticed and swung the gun toward him. I said back away. That's when Oliver did something that took everyone by surprise. He started reciting names and addresses. Vincent Caruso, federal inmate number 47291. ADX Florence, Gerald Rossetti, 1247 Commercial Street, Portland. Anthony DeLuca, 892 State Street, Bangor. Angela stared at him in shock. How do you know those names? Because my mom was a lot smarter than any of you gave her credit for, Oliver said calmly. She didn't just hire one private investigator to find out about Dad's problems. She hired 3, and she didn't just gather information about Vincent Caruso. She mapped out his entire organization, including your family's involvement. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a USB drive. Everything she learned is on here. Bank records, property transfers, communication logs, drug trafficking routes. She gave it to me to give to the FBI if anything ever happened to her. Angela's gun was shaking badly now. That's impossible. If she had that kind of information, why didn't she use it? Because she didn't want revenge, Oliver said. She just wanted Dad and me to be safe. But she knew that someday, people like you might come looking for us. So she made sure we'd have protection. He held up the USB drive. Everything your family has done for the past 15 years is documented on here. Every crime, every victim, every dollar laundered through legitimate businesses. Agent Travis was close enough now that when Angela turned to look at the USB drive, he moved. The takedown was swift and professional. Angela's gun went flying across the parking lot as Agent Travis secured her in handcuffs. Angela Rossetti, he announced, you're under arrest for kidnapping, conspiracy to commit human trafficking, extortion, and about 15 other federal charges we'll discuss back at the station. As she was led away, She turned back to glare at Oliver and me. This isn't over. My family has a long memory. So does the federal government, Agent Travis replied. And we're very good at protecting witnesses who help us dismantle criminal organizations. After Angela was secured in an FBI vehicle, Agent Travis turned to Oliver with obvious respect. That was incredibly brave, son. And smart. Did your mother really compile all that information? Oliver nodded. She said if anything ever happened to her, I should give this to the police. He handed Agent Travis the USB drive. She made me memorize all those names and addresses in case I ever needed to prove I was telling the truth. Agent Travis examined the drive. This could be the break we've needed to take down the entire Rossetti organization. I pulled Oliver into a fierce hug. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. But don't ever scare me like that again. I won't, Grandma. I promise. As we drove home together, I realized that Sarah had given me more than just a grandson to protect. She'd given me a partner in courage who was already showing signs of the remarkable man he was going to become. But I also realized that our story wasn't over yet. The Rossetti family had a long memory, and federal prison bars couldn't completely contain the kind of hatred we'd just encountered. 3 weeks later, my instincts proved correct when I found a new note slipped under my restaurant's door. The boy has something that belongs to us. We'll be in touch. This time, though, I wasn't afraid. Because this time I had a grandson who'd already proven he was brave enough to face whatever came next. And I had federal agents who were very interested in everything Sarah's investigation had uncovered. The war wasn't over, but we'd won another battle. And sometimes that's enough to build hope on. The USB drive Oliver's mother had prepared contained enough evidence to bring down not just the Rossetti family, but an entire network of criminal enterprises spanning from Maine to New Jersey. Agent Travis called it the most comprehensive organized crime intelligence package he'd seen in 20 years of federal law enforcement. Over the next month, I watched the news with fascination as dozens of arrests were made. Property seizures, business closures, asset forfeitures that totaled in the hundreds of millions. Angela Rossetti was charged with 43 federal crimes. Her father, Gerald, was arrested at his Portland restaurant on charges ranging from money laundering to contract murder. Vincent Caruso, already serving time, saw his sentence extended by another 30 years. Oliver and I were placed in witness protection temporarily while the investigation proceeded, but Agent Travis assured us it was just a precaution. The Rossetti organization is effectively destroyed, he told us during one of his weekly check-ins. There's no one left with the resources or motivation to retaliate. We returned to our normal lives in Millbrook with a sense of genuine safety for the first time since this nightmare began. Oliver enrolled in Little League. I started teaching him to cook on weekends at the restaurant. We even adopted a rescue dog, a golden retriever mix that Oliver named Danny in honor of his father. For 8 months, everything was perfect. Then the phone calls started. They came at different times of day, from different numbers, but the message was always the same. Heavy breathing, then a voice saying, "We know where you live." Agent Travis traced the calls, but they came from disposable phones purchased with cash. No fingerprints, no useful surveillance footage, no way to identify the caller. "It's probably just some local troublemaker who read about the case in the news," he assured me. "Some people get a thrill from scaring celebrities. I'm hardly a celebrity. You'd be surprised how famous you've become." The story of a grandmother and grandson taking down organized crime has been picked up by national media. You've gotten dozens of interview requests. I'd turned down all the interview requests, wanting to protect Oliver's privacy and our quiet life. But apparently, our story had spread anyway. The phone calls continued for 2 weeks, then stopped as suddenly as they'd started. I began to relax again, thinking Agent Travis had been right about it being a prank. Then Oliver disappeared for the 3rd time. This time, it happened in broad daylight from our own restaurant. Oliver had been doing homework at his usual table in the back corner while I prepared for the dinner rush. I'd stepped into the walk-in cooler for maybe 3 minutes to grab ingredients for the evening specials. When I came back out, Oliver was gone. His homework was still spread across the table. His backpack was still hanging on his chair. His glass of milk was still half full. But Oliver was nowhere to be found. I searched every inch of the restaurant, calling his name, my panic growing with each empty room I checked. The back door was standing open, something that should have been impossible since it was kept locked during business hours. I called 911, then Agent Travis, then started calling Oliver's name from the back alley. No response. Detective Santos arrived first, followed quickly by Agent Travis and a team of federal agents who'd apparently been stationed nearby just in case something like this happened. "Mrs. Thompson, we need you to think," Detective Santos said. "Did you see anyone unusual in the restaurant today? Any customers who seemed out of place?" I forced myself to focus, despite the terror clawing at my chest. There was a man at the counter around lunchtime. He ordered coffee and pie but barely touched either. He kept looking toward Oliver's table. "Can you describe him?" "Mid-40s, maybe. Brown hair? Average height. He was wearing a Red Sox jacket and jeans. Nothing that stood out, except—" I paused, trying to remember. "Except what?" "He had an accent, not local, more like Boston or New York." Agent Travis and Detective Santos exchanged glances. "Mrs. Thompson," Agent Travis said carefully, "we need to tell you something. 3 days ago, Angela Rossetti escaped from federal custody during a medical transport." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What? How is that possible?" "She complained of severe abdominal pain and was taken to a hospital for evaluation. During the transfer back to the detention center, the transport vehicle was ambushed. 2 guards were injured, and Angela disappeared. Why wasn't I told about this immediately? Because we had no reason to believe she posed a direct threat to you. Her escape appeared to be about fleeing the country, not seeking revenge. Apparently you were wrong." My phone rang. Unknown number. Agent Travis nodded for me to answer it. "Hello, Mrs. Thompson." It was Angela's voice, but she sounded different, harder, more desperate. "Where is my grandson?" "Oliver is safe for now, but his continued safety depends on your cooperation." "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. Justice for what you did to my family." "Angela, your family were criminals. Vincent Caruso destroyed dozens of lives. You can't seriously believe—" "I believe that my father is dying in federal prison because of information you provided to the FBI. I believe that everything my family built over 3 generations has been destroyed because of your testimony." Agent Travis was frantically typing on his phone, probably trying to trace the call again. "Your family built their fortune by terrorizing innocent people," I said, "by stealing businesses and threatening children. You destroyed yourselves. We provided services that legitimate institutions wouldn't. We helped people when banks said no. We protected neighborhoods when police couldn't." Angela's delusional rationalization of her family's crimes would have been laughable if she hadn't been holding my grandson hostage. "What do you want from me, Angela?" "I want you to confess that you fabricated evidence against my family. I want you to admit that Oliver's USB drive contained false information designed to frame innocent people. I won't lie to save myself." "You're not saving yourself, Mrs. Thompson. You're saving Oliver." Agent Travis held up his phone, showing me a message. "Call trace to abandoned warehouse district. Teams moving." "Angela," I said, trying to buy time, "even if I did what you wanted, it wouldn't help your family. The evidence speaks for itself. The FBI has bank records, surveillance footage, recorded conversations. Evidence that can be discredited if key witnesses recant their testimony." I understood. Angela wasn't just seeking revenge, she was trying to create reasonable doubt that might help her father's appeal. "You want me to go on television and claim I lied about everything. Live television, national audience, a full confession that you and Oliver conspired to frame my family for crimes we didn't commit. And if I refuse? Then Oliver joins his father permanently." The threat was clear, but something in her voice suggested desperation rather than confidence. Angela was running out of options, which made her more dangerous but also more likely to make mistakes. "I need to see Oliver first," I said. "I need proof that he's alive and unharmed. You'll see him when you're ready to make your confession. No deal." "I don't even know if you really have him or if this is some elaborate bluff." There was a long pause, then Oliver's voice came on the line. "Grandma, I'm okay. She hasn't hurt me. But Grandma, she's not alone. There are 3 other people here, and they're not as nice as she is." 3 other people. Angela was working with accomplices, which explained how she'd managed Oliver's kidnapping and escape. "Oliver, where are you? Can you see anything that might tell me your location?" "I can see water through a window, and there's a big red sign I can't quite read. Angela came back on the line. That's enough. You have 2 hours to decide, Mrs. Thompson. Call this number when you're ready to save your grandson's life. The line went dead. Agent Travis was already coordinating with the teams heading to the warehouse district. We'll find him, Mrs. Thompson. Angela made a mistake by letting him describe what he could see. What if you don't find him in time? What if she really will kill him? Agent Travis looked me straight in the eye. Then we'll make sure she pays for it. But Mrs. Thompson, we're going to find Oliver alive. I promise you that. I wanted to believe him, but as the minutes ticked by without any word from the search teams, I began to wonder if I should consider Angela's demand. Could I lie on national television to save Oliver's life? Could I destroy the case against criminals who'd terrorized dozens of families? Could I let Vincent Caruso and Gerald Rossetti potentially go free? The answer came to me with startling clarity. I could do anything necessary to protect my grandson. But as I reached for my phone to call Angela back, Agent Travis's radio crackled with an update that changed everything. We found the location, abandoned seafood processing plant on Commercial Wharf. But Agent Travis, you need to know that this isn't just a kidnapping anymore. We've got evidence of a much larger operation here. What kind of operation? The kind that explains why Angela Rossetti was so desperate to discredit your testimony. This place is a major distribution hub for human trafficking. We're looking at dozens of potential victims. I realized that Oliver hadn't just been kidnapped for revenge. He'd been taken to a place where children disappeared forever. And I had less than an hour to help save not just my grandson, but potentially dozens of other victims. The abandoned seafood processing plant on Commercial Wharf was a maze of rusted equipment and shadowy corridors that seemed designed for hiding things that shouldn't be found. Agent Travis briefed me as FBI tactical teams positioned themselves around the building. Mrs. Thompson, we've confirmed that this facility has been used for human trafficking for at least 3 years. Angela isn't just seeking revenge, she's trying to salvage what's left of her family's most profitable operation. The scope of the horror was overwhelming. How many victims? We're not sure yet. Thermal imaging shows approximately 20 people inside the building, but we can't distinguish between victims, guards, and Angela's people. I thought about Oliver, trapped in that nightmare place, and felt rage burn through my fear. What do you need from me? Angela has been calling you, which means she wants something only you can provide. We need you to make contact and keep her talking while our teams get into position. She wants me to confess on television that I fabricated evidence against her family. Agent Travis shook his head. Even if you did that, she can't let you or Oliver live. You both know too much about this operation now. The truth was stark and undeniable. This had never been about ransom or revenge. It was about silencing witnesses to crimes that went far beyond organized crime into the darkest corners of human depravity. I called the number Angela had given me. Mrs. Thompson, she answered immediately. Have you made your decision? I want to see Oliver first, face to face. Then we can discuss terms. You're hardly in a position to make demands. Actually, I am, because you need something from me that you can't get any other way. But I need to know my grandson is alive before I'll even consider giving it to you. There was a long pause. When Angela spoke again, Angela, her voice had changed, less confident, more desperate. You can see him, but you come alone. Any sign of police or FBI, and everyone in this building dies. Where do you want to meet? Loading dock B at the north end of the building. 10 minutes. Agent Travis was already shaking his head, but I held up my hand. Angela, I said, I'm coming, but I want you to know something. Whatever you're planning, whatever you think this accomplishes, it won't bring Vincent back or save your father. It will just add more victims to a list that's already too long. Save the lectures, Mrs. Thompson. Just bring your confession. She hung up. Agent Travis fitted me with a wire and GPS tracker, then went over the emergency signals one more time. Mrs. Thompson, if this goes wrong, it won't go wrong, I interrupted. Because you're going to get Oliver out of there, and I'm going to make sure Angela doesn't hurt anyone else. As I walked toward the loading dock, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. 12 years ago, I'd been a grieving mother who thought her son had abandoned her out of selfishness. Tonight, I was a grandmother willing to risk everything to protect her grandson and stop a criminal enterprise that destroyed families. The transformation felt like a lifetime compressed into months. Loading dock B was a concrete platform overlooking Portland Harbor. Angela was waiting for me, but she wasn't alone. Two men flanked her, both carrying weapons openly. "Mrs. Thompson," she said as I approached. "Thank you for coming. Where's Oliver?" She gestured toward a service door. "Inside, safe for now. I want to see him." First, we discussed terms. You're going to call CNN and request a live interview. During that interview, you'll confess that you and Oliver fabricated the evidence on that USB drive to frame my family for crimes committed by Vincent Caruso's organization. That's a lie, Angela, and you know it. Truth is a luxury we can't afford anymore, Mrs. Thompson. My father is dying in federal prison. My fiancé will never see freedom again. Everything my family built is gone because of information you provided. Your family built their fortune on suffering and terror. They deserved what happened to them. Angela's composure finally cracked completely. They deserved respect. They deserved gratitude. We kept this community safe when no one else would. We provided opportunities when legitimate businesses failed. You terrorized innocent people and sold children into slavery. We provided services that— Stop lying to yourself, I said firmly. You know what this place is used for. You know what happens to the children who disappear into buildings like this. Your family aren't misunderstood business people, you're monsters. One of Angela's associates stepped forward menacingly, but she waved him back. Enough philosophy, she said coldly. Make the call or Oliver dies. It's that simple. Show me Oliver first. Angela nodded to one of the men, who opened the service door. Oliver emerged, escorted by another armed guard. He looked scared but unharmed. "Grandma," he called, starting to run toward me. "Stay where you are, Oliver," Angela commanded. My grandson stopped obediently, but his eyes were alert, scanning the area like he was looking for something specific. "Oliver, are you hurt?" I called. "No, Grandma, but there are other kids inside who need help. Lots of them." Angela backhanded him across the face, and rage exploded through me like nothing I'd ever experienced. "Don't you dare touch him again," I snarled, taking a step forward. Both guards raised their weapons, but Angela held up her hand. "Mrs. Thompson, your grandson has been very chatty about what he's seen inside our facility. That creates complications for us." "What kind of complications?" "The kind that make it impossible for either of you to leave here alive, regardless of what confession you make." The admission confirmed what Agent Travis had suspected. This had never been about negotiation. It was about elimination. "In that case," I said, reaching into my jacket pocket, "I have something for you." Angela tensed, probably expecting a weapon. Instead, I pulled out my phone and held it up so she could see the screen. "This call has been live streaming to the FBI for the past 5 minutes. Every word you've said, every threat you've made, every crime you've admitted to, it's all been recorded." Angela's face went white. "That's impossible. We checked you for wires. You checked for traditional wires, but you forgot about smartphone apps that can broadcast directly to federal servers." In the distance, I could hear the sound of vehicles approaching at high speed. Angela screamed at her men to shoot me, but it was too late. FBI tactical teams swarmed the loading dock from 3 directions simultaneously. The 2 guards were down and disarmed before they could fire a shot. Angela made a desperate grab for Oliver. But my grandson had been paying attention during our earlier adventures. He ducked under her reaching arms and ran straight toward me. "FBI! Angela Rossetti, you're under arrest." Agent Travis appeared from behind a shipping container, leading a team of agents who had Angela surrounded and disarmed within seconds. As she was handcuffed for the 3rd time, Angela looked at me with pure hatred. "This isn't over, Mrs. Thompson. My family has friends you've never heard of, resources you can't imagine. Your family," I replied calmly, "is finished, and those children inside are going home to their real families." Over the next 2 hours, FBI teams methodically cleared the processing plant. They found 18 children aged between 6 and 16, all victims of trafficking who'd been reported missing from various states over the past 3 years. Oliver helped identify which rooms had been used for different purposes, providing information that helped agents understand the full scope of the operation. "Grandma," he said, as we watched ambulances taking the rescued children to hospitals, "do you think Dad would be proud of us?" I pulled him close, breathing in the scent of salt air and freedom and the promise of a future without fear. "I think your father would be amazed by how brave you are, sweetheart. And I think he'd be grateful that we finally stopped the people who forced him to run away. Agent Travis approached us with a satisfied expression. Angela Rossetti is facing federal charges that will keep her in prison for the rest of her life. Her remaining associates have been arrested. The trafficking operation is completely dismantled. Is it really over this time? I asked. It's really over, Mrs. Thompson. You and Oliver can go home and live normal lives now. As we drove back to Millbrook that night, Oliver was quiet for a long time. Grandma, he finally said, what's a normal life supposed to feel like? I thought about the question seriously. After everything we'd been through, after all the danger and fear and uncertainty, what would normal look like for us? I think, I said carefully, it feels like waking up in the morning and knowing that the biggest decision you'll face is what to make for breakfast. It feels like going to school and worrying about math tests instead of criminals. It feels like having time to be bored. Oliver laughed. I think I'd like to be bored for a while. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. 1 year later, Oliver had adapted to normal life with the resilience of childhood. He'd made friends at school, joined the chess club, and started playing piano. His nightmares had faded, replaced by dreams about becoming either an FBI agent or a chef. The restaurant was busier than ever, not because of our notoriety, but because word had spread about the quality of our food and the warmth of our hospitality. I'd hired 2 part-time employees so I could spend more time with Oliver, teaching him to cook and helping with homework. We'd also started a college fund in Danny's name for children who'd been rescued from trafficking situations. It seemed like the right way to honor his memory while helping other families rebuild their lives. On a quiet Tuesday evening, as Oliver did homework at his usual table while I prepped vegetables for the next day's soup, I realized that we'd finally found what Sarah had wanted for her son, a safe place to grow up, surrounded by love and community. The bell above the restaurant door chimed, and I looked up to see a familiar face. Agent Travis walked in, but he was out of uniform and carrying a bouquet of flowers. Mrs. Thompson, he said with a smile, I was hoping you might have time for dinner. I've been wanting to try your famous blueberry pie for months. I smiled back, realizing that normal life might include some unexpected possibilities. I think we can manage that, I said. Oliver, would you like to help me serve Agent Travis some pie? Can I tell him about my science project? Oliver asked excitedly. Of course, sweetheart. As I watched Oliver enthusiastically explain his volcano model to Agent Travis, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought us to this moment. We'd started as strangers, thrown together by tragedy and danger. We'd become a family forged by courage and love. And for the first time in 12 years, I knew with absolute certainty that Danny would be proud of the people we'd become and the life we'd built together. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.